15th of Shvat, Samech Vav, page Kuf Tet.
So we saw how Yaakov Avinu in his Veda Babes Lovan, he was Mavada the oilers of Shenoshu V'Nochel Toihu, and he was Mavada Milmaila Lamata, even from Akudim, Nikudim, Ubrudim, or the Ubrudim is Madrega Velama Achilas, but that's the Shlemus of Tikkun. Which I said in order to do that, he had to draw also Amshachas from Akudim, and even Lamailum is in order to be Machaber, the Eres and the Keilim, after then a fila in Olam HaNikudim. But that's in even Olam HaToyu. And so we saw Shekol Zeh, Abiru Olamaila. We saw that Be'ikeh, that's Abira in the Olam HaSalyonim, because like we saw when the Union had an Afilas and Etzutzes occurred in Toihu, then the first Bira is Olam HaAtzilas, the first Bira after that, Shvira, and the Fila on the part of the Etzutzes is Olam HaAtzilas, and in order to, as we said, to carry that out, B'Shleimus, you have to have an Asinus Koyach from very high Madrid, what Asinus Hakudi. Who are the day Torah mitzvahs? The he was pearled out for the union of Torah and mitzvahs. Me'achar shehabiru hu bihatoy. Since Be'ikah, the bira is in the elements of Kedusha, and even in the elements prior to elements Bria Tzir Vasiyah. So that's all in the union of Tachlis Hatoy. And so since we're Nevada different madrigas and nuances from the Shviras HaKelim in the Olam HaSalyonim, which are Tachlis HaKedusha, Mamela HaBira Hu Alidei Torah U'Mitzvahs, enough for there to be the Bira Alidei Torah U'Mitzvahs. So the Shaila occurs, how is it Shai by Yaakov Avinu Torah Mitzvahs? He didn't actually have Torah Mitzvahs. It hadn't yet been Matan Torah, so Ein Chanami, but at least he was toiled at through the Kiyum Torah mitzvahs that was shot by the Ovids. And we saw that they had a very high oiven of Kiyum mitzvahs, which is in Ruchnias and in Olam HaSalyonim, similar to what the Kiyum mitzvahs that we have after Matan Torah, but it was all in Ruchnias and in Amshachas, as the Alter brings in certain places in Torah and also in the Kutei Torah, that the Ikam Shochet they made was taking the Olam HaSalyonim. Therefore, he's Mavara, the union of the Olam HaSalyonim, isn't it? So if you guys have some sort of hidden jokes or whatever, then you can maybe help us benefit from them. Alright? And in the meantime, it would be better if you just looked in the safe writing. However, we saw that now there was a bira that remained, which was the bira of Esau. And Esau was Dafke Lamata Mata, he's Dafke the outcome of what you might call the Shviras HaKelim, the Nefila and the Tzutzis, and he's the embodiment of that whole period of the Klippers. And therefore the Rebbe calls it the union from Ra Denoiga, because albeit since Esau came from Yitzchak, and he was a son of Yitzchak, and the Gemara it's brought down in the Zohar Kodesh and also quoted in many places that was from literally the Peselas, as you might call it, the leftovers of the Madrega of Yitzchak, the very, very high Madrega of Gevulis. From that they fell into Noiga and into the union of Ra, eventually from the Madrega of Gevulah, that's according to certain authorities, that's the whole union of Toihu. And so therefore Esau in his emias, he has a shaykhus to Yitzchak, and Yitzchak is Tachlis HaKedusha. So therefore the Rebbe says the Ra of Esau is the Ra of Noiga. what, as we know in Tanya, Klippas Noiga is not complete and utter Klippa, but it's got a certain shaykhus to Kedusha. Therefore it's called the shining Klippa, Klippas Noiga. However, it's a mixture. It was what occurred through the Chet Eitzadas on the part of all the Mauritian that it became Taroives Teiv Ora, the mixture of Teiv, good and evil, all together in the different madrigas, particularly in Elam Hazeh, that occurred that Taroives, a mixture of the Teiv together with the Ra Mamish, and that's called Klippas Noiga. So Esav is the Ra of Noiga. What it's brought down in Tanya, that Noiga is like a form of mamutza between the lowest madriga in Kedusha to the Inyan Aklippas Mamish, and therefore it's got both Teiv or Ra. And the aspect of Ra in Noiga, that can fall Mamish into the Klippas. So Einochaname, Esav fell over into the Klippas, but he still has a slight achiza in Inyan Kedusha. He's not Mamish Gimel Klippas Tamei Esla Legamri, and he can't possibly, because he's a son of Yitzchak, and that's in Pnimis Adroin, that he's got a certain hole in the madrigas of Kedusha, but he's fallen down through the mamutza of Noiga into the Inyan Ra, and the Ra has gained the upper hand, and that's what he brings there. The Alter Rebbe is saying that the Inyan of Klippas Noiga is sometimes Ruby Ra, it's more Ra than Teiv, but it does have the Inyan from Teiv. So therefore, Yankiv Avinu, after he's Aveda in Beis Lova, what he'd been Mamshich all these in Yonim Lamaila, the Bira in its very highest point of after the Shvira, first of all Atzilas, and then the other elements of Bria and Yitzira. So Yankov Avinu had already carried all that out. Now he realized that he's got to turn to a new type of Bira altogether. What that's the Inyan of the Bira of Esav, the Bira of the Ra, of Noiga, meaning how it's come through the Inyan HaKedusha into an Afila Mamish, into evil, into Ra. So how's he going to do that? That's already a new stage and a whole new demand on Yankov Avinu to approach that type of elevation of the Inyan Ra. So therefore he said, the Habiru Hazeh Hu Alidei Tshuva Davke. Like we saw in the Maimah, that to be Mavara, difficult things, which are mamish in a state of distance, and Nafila, it's not enough to avoid a Torah mitzvahs, but you have to have the Inyan of Tshuva. Because we saw that Tshuva was L'mayla Torah mitzvahs. The Tzadikim Gemurim can't even really reach or stand in that madrega. So therefore Yankov Avinu knew that in order to be Mavara Esav, and particularly the Ra Sheba Esav, and to elevate that into Toiv, or to take the Natzutzes that they've fallen so deep into the Inyan of Ra Mamish, then he's going to have a whole new Koyach and a whole new Giloi in his Avodah. That's the Inyan of the Balei Teshuvah. He's going to have to come on to that type of Koyach. Shadi Deizeh Mahapchim Gam Esora Latoi. So here we see that the Bira of the Ra is not just to take out the Natzutzes from the Ra and leave the Ra just behind, as it were, the etzim, what you might call Metzius of the Ra. You have to leave it fall and leave it in a state of what you might call abandonment. But the ultimate purpose is to be Mahapich Esora Latoi. Well, that's a very amazing concept, that you can actually take the Ra and turn it into Teiv. So where do you meet up with that? You meet up with that in Tanya. The Alter Rebbe says that that's the ultimate perfection, is to be Mahapit the Ra Lateiv. And the Tzaddik, and the interesting is, here it becomes a little bit confusing, the only person that's done that is the Tzaddik Gomer, as he calls him in Tanya. He's the one that's been Mahapit, the Nefesh Abami, and the Eitz Hora Mamish Toiv. That's what the Alter Rebbe says. He's been Mahapit, the Ra El Ha Toiv. We just said that the Tzadikim Gemurim, they're not able to stand in the Balei Teshuvah. So, how does that fit in? That if Yankov Avinu is going to have to use the Inyan from Tshuva to be Mahapich Esara'ala Latoi. So therefore we have to say that the pshat is that even though 2 lines earlier the Rebbe said that the ikar of Esav is the bureau of the Ra of Noiga, but what he says that the bureau alidei tshuva is to bring about haisapches hara litoiv mamish, to turn the Ra mamish into toiv. And that's what he brings in Perek Yud and in Perek Tes and Perek Yud. In Tanya, the Tzadik Gomer has the atzlocha of being mamish l'mahapich the Ra el ha-toiv mamish. If you look over there. However, there would never be any such thing as lehafich ha-toiv lo Ra chas v'shalom. That doesn't occur. The Rosh Haki Gomer, the Rosh Haki Noira that might happen to be, he drives his nefesh hakis out of himself, as he says in Perek Yud Aleph. The nefesh hakis literally flees the situation and stands b'makif olov. Or he doesn't turn the toiv into Ra chas v'shalom. In fact, we see by the nefesh hapahaniyos and by the Ra, then he can turn the Ra into toiv. Yeah, that's the Tzadik Gomer over there. He's mahapet the Ra le-toiv. As is mavur dot in Tanya. So we have to say that the reason for that is that sof kosov, the inyan of the Ra is only a type of levush, and therefore we take the inyan of the Ra in the Odom, the Ra of his nefesh bahamius, which can eventually be Ra Gomo in Drushim at a Poraduma in Torah. The Alter Rebbe explains that the whole of the Poraduma is that you burn him completely, and he goes down to his basic makeup, which is just ashes, and then you take those ashes and you can use them even to be mataya, the highest forms of tumah. In other words, you can take, so the shoyer, the pora, is indicatory of the clippers. It says potaran. So I could be a red one, or it's completely red. What does this mamish inyan of the clippers? And through the inyan of burning him away like that, then you get to the basic nakuda, which is the afer, and then you can use that for the highest kedusha. So the Alter Rebbe says the same thing, that really there's nothing which is mamish evil be'etzem. Etzem ra, b'tachlis hara. The mensch has got in himself a koyach, what he calls a koyach hamisaveh, he calls it, a koyach of longing and desiring for things. A koyach which draws him to want and to add to his own materials by way of wanting and yearning for things. And so that's the koyach hamisaveh haposhut, he calls it. And he said that's like a rotz and chozak in the mensch, that he wants things to add to his materials. And he said basically that's what you might call a neutral, unshaped thing in the man. When he's brought down into the world, then there's put onto it levushim loy toivim. There's put on. Therefore, there's a Gemara in Sanhedrin, what the Gemara tells it, Antoninus, in the last in Perek HaCheli. There's written over there. Antoninus asked Rebbe. They used to learn together secretly in this cave underneath the ground. The Romans wouldn't know what he was doing. Antoninus. Even though I think he was the Caesar already by that time. He used to learn with Rebbe. So it's written that he asked Rebbe the Shaila, it's this business of the Yetzer Hara. It's a very difficult business. When do you get the Yetzer Hara? So Rebbe says you get it from the moment you're born, from when you come out of the... Or he said that he thinks that's the case. He thinks that's the case. He said that to Rebbe, and Rebbe basically agreed with him that when you come out of your womb, you already get the Yetzer Hara. But prior to that, you didn't have it. On the contrary, prior to that, the mensch was in his mother's womb, and this Gemara, which is just the pre-lines before the Alter Rebbe brings the Tanya, the Gemara in the Sekta Nida, that when the child's in his mother's womb, he's learning Torah the whole time. So on the contrary, inside the womb, the child has got only good things and tremendously high revelations of his Yetzer Tov and his Nefesh Elokis. When he comes out, then he gets, then all of a sudden, he gets put on this Yetzer Hara business, and it comes into him as he's coming out of his mother's womb. I say, the Gemara thought that Rebbe and Antoninus agreed that was the case. So what does that mean? It's brought down and says that they literally, in order to test you and give you the whole trial, the struggle with the Nefesh Abamis and the Yetzer Hara, they put levushim on this simple drive force that I mentioned, Scott. They put levushim on it, and those levushim are what you call evil levushim. They're not good levushim, and they pull you in the wrong direction. And so when a boy is young, he's always drawn to the physical, and the child runs after all the gashim sticky things, and makes a big fuss, and gets angry, and shouts and hollers, and it wants what it wants. Well, those are all the levushim, and as you grow up, and it gets even worse. Until, when you get 13 years and one day, and then the Nefesh Elokis pops in, and then there's a whole new situation starts where there's like a fight between the Tov and the Ra. But the whole inyan of that Ra is only a levush. It's not really be'etem. Therefore, the Alter Rebbe says later until you can't turn the Tov into Ra, because the Ra is only a levush. You can't. Tov is etem elokus. You can't turn the Tov into Ra. Or with the Ra, you can turn into Tov, because it's only a form of a levush. Whenever you can sort of get rid of the Ra, and some of it you can be mahapik, and so, but you can take the etzem koyach of the Ra and you can turn it into Tov by removing and purifying some of those levushim, depending on what is their type and what has to be there. But ultimately you can turn them into the good, because they're only a form of a levush, and the whole power is a poshet power which was put in the mensch. And therefore says the Alter Rebbe that you can be mavare to the point of being mahapik the whole the Yetzer Hora and the Nefesh Mamish L'Tov, because he's only basically a power which has got forms on him. He's got shapes and forms which have been put on him to pull you in the wrong direction in order to give you this whole trial and this whole challenge, which is called challenge. That's what it's called. That you should have a struggle and a war and an effort to carry out what you've got to carry out. So therefore, says the Alter Rebbe, you can be mamish mahapik to Ra L'Tov. But we could say that by the Tzaddik Gomer, what he achieves, he drives away those what you might call levushim that have been put on that drive, and he gets rid of them, and then he reveals only the drive, which is a poshet and simple drive, and he brings that over into Kedusha. And that's the pshat that he's mahapik the Ra L'Tov. If you look in Tanya, it's Meduya, because the Alter Rebbe says, Alidei Soros HaLevushim HaTzoyim. You take away the Levushim HaTzoyim, and you bring the koyach of the Ra into the Tov. Although we could say that if you become a Baal Teshuva, and you become a tremendous Baal Teshuva like it's Mavur here, then you can be mahapik the etzem Ra itself into Tov, not just remove the Ra from the driving power, which was evil, and bring that into good, but you can turn the etzem Ra itself into Tov. And that's what he means here. That if you mavara the inyan of the tshuva, then you can be mavara the mamish mahapik the etzem Ra L'Tov. And that's what he brings in Perek Zion, the Alter. That's what he's mavara over there. That there's this inyan of the Baal Tshuva, that he gets into such a tremendous driving force, as he describes him over there, similar to what we described him here, but much more Makitza, and he brings him being the Eretz Tziyah of Oyev, in this place of thirst and longing for water, and he makes this tremendous effort and driving force to get out of the cliff. So if you look carefully over there, he said he elevates everything with him. He creates such an energy that drags with it even the actual Ra. And that's the Kiddush of Perek Zion, that through the creation of this tremendous power on the part of the Baal Tshuva, he can elevate even the Gimel Klippus HaTameis Mamish. If you look carefully over there, you'll see even the very Ra itself is fallen Mamish into absolute Ra. And that's the greatness of the Baal Tshuva, that he's able to be mahapich even the Ra L'Tov, meaning mamish the etzem of the Ra. In the Tzaddik Gomer, he turns the drive inside the mensch into Tov. He gets it out of Ra into Tov, and in that regard he's mahapich Ra L'Tov. But he leaves behind the etzem Gimel Klippus HaTameis. In the Baal Tshuva, he's able to mamish be mala everything, and he's mala gamas Ra L'Tov, through this tremendous power which he generates, the power of tshuva. And Mamileh says the Rebbe, that needs a lot of koyach. That's a tremendous inyan, reach a level where you're already ready to be Mavada the Ra. So ever says the Rebbe on Mavada Bechinas Ra, in order to do that, Sharik Lia is Tchila Bechinas Abira Batoi. First of all, you got to cause as much perfection inside the Toiv as what you can. In other words, Yaakov Avinu was rather, older than the Tutsis before they really got falling, and he brought them into Atzilas and into Bria and Yetzirah and so on and so forth. And then each time they fell further than the Tutsis, the Indian of the Ra, and fell all the way down into El Mazeh. So now he knew he was going to have to deal with that. But in the meantime, he built up this tremendous power, and that's before in Torah and in other places that he built up the whole Indian of what we call the Shleimus Abinyan, the completion of the whole building of Elam Atzilas in a way that even it was already there, of course, it had to be there, otherwise it wouldn't have been a creation the way Hashem wanted it, but it wasn't there in the perfect way. And Yaakov Avinu, so he's all Aveda over there, he got the whole of Elam Atzilas all built up, and he had Malchus Atzilas, that's the Mashpia into Elamas Bria Yetzirah Vasiyah. He had Malchus Atzilas full of a tremendous light that was ready to come down now all the way into Elam Hazeh, and that would be like a tremendous burning power, and all the little Natutsis would jump into it. That's what he'd done already. In other words, he did everything he could to strengthen his own Madrigas, and that would be as a light that would automatically draw the Ra in, and it would draw in the Natutsis of the Ra. Even the Ra which had fallen mamish into the Gimel Klippas Tamayas, that can only be done through the Indian Tshuva. So even for that, Yaakov, so in other words, he'd done all these different Pirulim and preparations, so that everything was ready to bring down a tremendous, what you might call, invasion of all the Inyan down into his Shtaushlas and into Mazeh, hoping that all the Inyanim would jump in and they would all be like you bring a huge bonfire, we got all these little sparks that all come in. That's what we mentioned yesterday. Hizika Abid was Milmaila Lamata. So therefore he had to first of all strengthen all of his Inyanim Haraya and the Elam Hashalyanim to be ready to put the focus on Elam Hazeh, particularly on the Inyan of the Ra, how it fall, and even the Gimel Klippas Tamayit. So therefore he says, there had to be the Bira HaToiv. Why? The Kshoit Atzmacha. This is famous Maimah HaGemara. Kshoit Atzmacha Tchilo V'Achachach Kshoit Acheidim. Now the word Kshoit in Aramaic means emes, truth. So first of all you have to fix up yourself. Kshoit Atzmacha, you have to truthify yourself, then you can truthify others. Kshoit Atzmacha V'Achachach Kshoit Acheidim. But you guys are learning Bob Basha. Anybody around here learning Bob Basha? Nobody. Yeah, you're learning Bob Basha. It's in Perik. You guys learning Perik Cheskes Sabatim?
Not yet.
Are you not learning yet Perik Cheskes Sabatim?
We're still finishing the first part.
Right? Are you guys learning? What daf are you on?
Lamed.
You got a long way though. It's a big long Perik Cheskes Sabatim, one of the longest parts in Shvat. So right, not far from the end of Perik Cheskes Sabatim to that Gemara, but the Mokir, it's not the first time. The first time it occurs in Bava Metzia, right near the end. What it means is you've got to first of all make yourself truth, and then you can make other people truth. So sometimes the Gemara uses that in a very practical way. Sometimes if something's demanded from you according to halacha, that you got to move something so that people don't get damaged, or you say, well, if you guys let them, first of all, let them cut their pieces off and do what they're supposed to, then I'll do mine. So you're not allowed to say that, because and then you worry about others. But you first of all be out. You have to first of all be Zeda. And the Gemara learns from a Pasik. It's a Pasik in the Novi, it's a Fanya Novi. What he brings over there, Koshushu, his Koshushu, an interessante Loshen in a Pasik from Tzafanya. But over there, his Koshushu means over there literally to gather together all the right things. Well, that's like making a pile of truth. So you got to Koshushu, his Koshushu. First of all, you want to affect others. First of all, his koishish, you do it in yourself, then you'll be able to do it to others. That's a very fascinating cloud of the Gemara. So I would have thought somebody would have piped up that came up over the years in the so-called tax on Lubavitch. You guys are not familiar with the whole business. The Rebbe is the Frierdiker Rebbe and the Rebbe and all the Rebbe to that point. They all said you have to go out and do mitzvahim. You got to affect the world. You got to take time off your learning and this and that. And go out and affect and achieve things in the world, as they say in Yiddish, Uftan in der Welt. So a lot of these big people who weren't in favor of that, they said, first of all, first of all, you got to be perfect in yourself. First, you got to finish all the avodah with yourself. Then you can go out and work in the world. You mean to tell me all these young little guys that are going out putting food on people and everything? You mean to tell me, even some of the older ones, you mean to tell me they've already finished all they're supposed to do? What are they doing running around being straight achedim? First of all, let them finish up them themselves. I said, so what did the Rebbe answer? The Rebbe said, that's all if the world is perfectly matukan and everything's fine, everything you can say that, then you can say, when it comes to the cloud, to the whole cloud, all the world's a fire and there's a fire burning and people are drifting away from Yiddishkeit when the whole world's in a terrible mess and there's a tremendous drift towards the inyanim ability Ritzuyim and the whole thing, then you can't say Kshoit Atzmo, Chatchila v'chachak Kshoit Achedim, that then you have to go out and save people. It's even from Pikuach Nefesh, and then the Rebbe said another Rebbe, on the contrary, by doing that, by helping other people, that will also be moisif in your Kshoit Atzmo, that will help you to give you a tremendous advance in your work on yourself. So I can see you guys are all adequate, very naive Lubavitches. You know that you just got to go out and you didn't know there's a whole thing from Sheit Atzmo. Like he was implicated, the Rebbe said, in other words, that Yaakov before he went to try and be Mavara Esav and Mahapat Torah, Alatoyim, Ariches, first of all he had to get himself ready, because that's a very tremendous task to do. And he had to finish off all the inyanim in Kedusha, in Olam Shalyainim, Oya Tzadich, Lishchazik, Tchila V'Chinus HaBirurim T'Tikun. He had to make everything right inside Olam HaTikun. Oz B'Chel Televares B'Chinus Orah, then he'd be able to go and make the Ra into two, and to take on Esau. That's in and Kshoit Atzmo Tchila V'Chachak Kshoit Achedim. Zehu Shesholach Malachim El Esau. That's what he sends to these Malachim to Esau, V'Moidialoi. And he tells him, Im Lovon Garti, and Rashi says, Tadyag Mitzvah Shomanti, I kept all the 613 commandments, V'hainu Shomoidialoi, Shagam, Bira, Kola Birurim L'Maila. Some people say that that's not Birur, no, it's a verb, a Birer, that he was Mavara, Kol Birurim, or some say that maybe that word Gam should be Goma. Goma Biru Kol, maybe Goma Biru. Kol Birurim L'Maila, B'Chinus HaToiv, Halidei, HaMitzvahs. V'chvar Nishchazek B'Chinus HaTikun. He's already been Mishchazik. In other words, he's got himself prepared and strengthened and ready by having prepared all the Inyanim Hadayah and the Olamas and all the different Madregas. He's got it all ready now too, as you might call it, advance on Olam Hazeh, come down and take on, as you might say, Olam Hazeh. Chazik B'Chinus HaTikun V'yato H'Gia Ho'eis L'Varas Esav Shu B'Chinus Horah. So now it become the time, the moment has come, to come down into Olam Hazeh and take on Esau. Ki V'Yachol To'atole Father, because now he can do it. In other words, if he would have met up with Esau at the beginning before he went to all this Avedim based Lavan, then he wouldn't have been able to do it. But now, maybe he can. So the point being, what's the big advantage now that he's got? As we said, all the Elamas Mutukonim from the Shviras HaKelim, and even more than that, he's caused in Elam HaTikun a proper development of the whole union of Tikkun. So therefore it's brought down another Maimonim that he's been mamshich Oyer Godel, the shoyrish of the whole Indian of Tikkun, which, like we said, it comes from Akudim, very high level. He's brought that down into Malchus. That's what we saw when he parted with love and he built a Matzeva. So it's brought down an iron base barichas about that Matzeva, that's like the building up of Malchus into a Shleimas. It's like the Lavona, when it's in its full, how do you call it, Shleimas, the middle, the Lavona. But that's Malchus being recovered from its highest point. So Yaakov Avinu had already reached that point. He'd reached the middle of all the Inyonim in Malchus. And so therefore there was a tremendous power that could be brought down into Elam Hazeh. And therefore that would shine down on the Ra, and it would be like a big bonfire, as we mentioned before. The Nitzutzes, hopefully, even the lowest fallen Nitzutzes would literally jump into it or move up into the Inyan of that Godel. So therefore that's what he was being modia, or he thought that Esav would be very, very interested to hear, and that's where things were holding. But unfortunately the Malachim came back and told him that Esav wasn't very interested at all. And the Rahman Nitzlan, he was still in the same way that he was, and that it was much too early to hope that there would be a bureau for the time being upon him in Esau. So therefore, he says, and that's what we asked, why did he have to tell Esau that I got all these things, Chamoyer, I got Tzoyin, and I got Eved, Vadim, and Shvat. Why did he need to boast about those things to Esau? If Esau he was trying to win favor in Esau's eyes, then it wasn't good to tell him all the good things he had. So that we know he wasn't telling him all the good things he had. What he was doing was hoping that Esau had already made a certain aliyah in himself, and he would appreciate what these madregas indicate in Pnimis Advarim, and he would understand that they are remozim on what you might call the achievements of Yaakov Avinu in his Aveda and his preparation of the world for the Gilui Lamata of Elamatikra. So therefore he said, I've got many oxen and I have many donkeys. He calls them in the singular, even though he means many of them. He said, Shazel, Bchinas, Madregas, the Kedusha. Those are all things inside the whole Elam of Kedusha, and that's what there's a posik that Yaakov Avinu said in the brachas at the end of the Torah. Well, actually Moshe Rabbeinu said that, but it's the same. Rashi said over there it's the same in Yonim as what Yaakov Avinu said. B'choyer shoyroi hodor loi. That's referring to Yosef in Emerson. But he says that the firstborn of his ox is very fitting for him, Hadaloi. And so what Rashi said over there, that why did he compare Yosef to a shoyer, to the firstborn of a shoyer? Rashi said over there at the end of the Torah, in Sefer Dvarim, Rashi says that a shoyer is a very strong and powerful animal. And so he said that Yosef HaTzadik has got this tremendous power, to literally cry, a shoyer bangs through things and gets things done. It doesn't reckon with any, what you might call, partitions in the way. And so the same thing, Yosef had this tremendous power that he was able to be mayor from the highest madrega to the lowest madregas and affect already the world. And it's brought down and says that Yosef was like the beginning, ultimately, of the whole thing that Yaakov originally had in mind, because we see that Yosef went into Mitzrayim and he was mavar all the Mitzrayim and they all became bottled to him with the whole. That was like a big start in the whole process of ultimately being mavar the whole world. So therefore he says, he's got this firstborn ox. That's the power of breaking through all the different partitions. Hodoloi is perfect, or appropriate for him. Or he said another pasuk, Yisachar Chamoyer Borim, that Yisachar was compared by Yaakov in his brachas to a bony donkey, Chamoyer Borim. And so once again, Rashi brings over there, what's the connection with a chamer? That a chamer is also a very obstinate animal, and the more bone it has, the more it sort of stands in its place with a big power, it doesn't move. Yeah. So Yisachar was a mention. He said he's going to learn Torah and nobody's going to move him from the spot, and therefore he became eventually the B'nai Torah, and Yisrael used to help him and the whole Arichas. So that's what it considers in other places that those two madrigas of Shoyer and Chamoyer, they represent what you might describe as the obstinacy and the Kabbalah soil of Kedusha. In other words, if you want to really achieve things and you want to really affect the world around you through your Torah and through, you have to learn what's Kabbalah soil, and you have to be obstinate, you have to stand in your place and like a donkey and not move, you know. You've got to be obstinate and how do you call it, hard to get, you know. You've got to be really strong and determined and bound over with a tremendous intensity to your goal. And those are the two inyanim of B'choy Shoyer and a chamer gore, a bony donkey. Achrei shenish chazik b'pinas hatikun. Once Yaakov Avinu being mischazik in this whole inyan of taking into himself all these different inyanim in Kedusha, the Kabbalah Seil and the Teikef, or the inyan from Kedusha, then b'yochel televarer es horah the Esau. Now he can go over, he's got everything ready, and he can be Mavara, he can bring this tremendous light from Malchus into Esau, and hopefully all the Netzutzes will just come out and they will jump into this tremendous light. But that's the Biru Milmaila Lamata. And that was his whole chespay. And therefore the Medrash also says that the B'choyer, Shoyer, and Chamoyer Gorem are Maramas of the two Mashiachim. B'choyer Shoyer is Mashiach ben Yosef, and Chamoyer Gorem is Maramas of Mashiach ben David, Shenema, Oni V'reichaval, Al Chamer, that the Mashiach will ride literally on a donkey. That's the two inyanim of Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David. And it was that Yaakov Avinu was really B'pnimius, he was aiming to bring Mashiach. Yeah, as he stated in Jerusalem Exodus, that he thought that he would make the world perfect. He was ready to mamish bring everything into a state of tikkun, even Esav and all these guys and all these inyanim. That's what Yaakov Avinu was after. And that's why he had a son called Yosef, because Yosef had even more power. Yosef came from a tremendously high madrega, and he eventually, the Hashgacha took Yosef into Mitzrayim. So Yaakov never forgot. When he saw that, he thought, oh, this is the beginning of his dream, and maybe we're going to affect the whole world, and we're going to bring the perfection of the whole world. That's what Yaakov could try. And therefore we see that Yosef, amazing thing that Rashi brings down in Parsha, Parsha Vayigash, Rashi brings down that Yosef tried to talk all the Mitzrayim into making Milah, and he was matzliach with a lot of them. He got them to mal themselves. Rashi brings it down that all the people came to Paro and they said, "What are we going to do? There's no food. You know, the 7 years of the famine have started." So Paro said, go to Yoshi. You have to go to him. He's the one in charge of the whole thing. And they said, but we can't go to Yoshi because we go to him. And he says, we've got to first of all make Milah, and then he'll give us the wheat. So Paro said, look, I can't help you guys, He said, look at what he did. He said, all the wheat that we gathered, it all went rot. You know the whole story, that they gathered also some wheat. Paro in the Mitzvah, but it all went rotten. Yosef's wheat all stayed perfect. So, but that was because Yosef knew how to put, the Gemara says in Shabbos that he put some ground in with the wheat. Oh, big in the Gemara and the whole big Arichas. Anyway, Yosef, he had a patent, as they call it. He knew how to look after the wheat. Or they didn't. So Paro said, look, he made a gezerah against us, and all our wheat went bad. He said, if you're not careful, we'll make a gezerah on us ourselves, and we'll all go back. We'll just die out or something. So he said, he says it, then you should be careful, you should do it. So a lot of the Mitzrayim mal themselves. Yeah. So what does he do? Maya said, in other words, that Yosef was Yaakov Avinu Shliach. He wanted to bring the whole world to be ready. And ready for the giver of Elikus Nomaila Lamata, well, that's going to be the from Gula Shleima. He was ready right then to turn the world into the way it's supposed to really be. From there at the beginning. Good, you guys have got floating, but there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, it's brought down in the Agadashal Pesach. So we have to be matakin that. What Yosef wanted to mal the mitzvah, and he did mal them, some of them. That was how do you call it, a not such good thing, and we have to be matakin that. We have to make a ticket, and in the Agadashal Pesach, we're matakin. You're not familiar with the Gamsa. You're not familiar with the whole thing. Anyway, the whole sichel, the Rebbe and the whole business of in the Haggadah Pesach, that once again it was a little bit too early for that. And Yosef Hatari was so tremendously high that he was already holding by these things, but the world wasn't really ready at that moment. Just like Yaakov ran into the same problem here, and he and Yosef kept meeting up with this problem. That for some reason Hashem didn't want it at that point, that it should be ready for all this birah, and it wasn't. And so Yaakov being himself, he's the first one to meet up with the whole problem. However, we've heard the Rebbe comes from Tanya, and he says, and he says, that is what he said to Esau, and I have been late, I've been delayed, to be late, ad ator, I've been held up till now, but now I'm ready to meet you. So we said at the beginning of the Mahar, why did he have to be held up? Why did he have to take 20 years? Make it quicker. Why does it take so much time for? So he said, to be emes lo yahavalei acher kokam. He shouldn't have really done that. He should have done it quicker. He said, Ki abrocha berocha yitzchok heim b'dei levar es Esau. Because he said all the brachas he got from his father Yitzchok, they were given in order to be emes, to be mavara es Esau. Because it's well known that Yitzchok wanted to bless Esau, and instead of blessing Esau, he blessed Yankee. So at the moment he was blessing, he thought he was blessing Esau, but later, shortly after, he realized that it had gone to Yankee, and he was masking Yitzchok. When he heard that, he said, "Oh, Kaval, I have to take back these brachas." And what did he say? Gam Baruch yeah. He said, "Oh, if I bench him, then he's got the brachas." Because all of a sudden Yitzchok realized that that was the only way to be Mavara. Yitzchok was that it had to go darker through Yankee. It couldn't go just straight, it had to go through Yankee Avinu. So therefore Yankee Avinu got the brachas of Yitzchok. But what was the whole purpose? The whole purpose was ultimately to be Mavara Esau. But he knew that in the meantime he has to go to Beis Lavan and fix up all the inyonim over there, and he has to get everything ready in order to be Mavara as Esau. So therefore he said, mitzad the kavana that Yitzchok benched him, or the kavana was that he should be Mavara Esau mitamid, well, that should have happened pretty soon. But he said, what could he do? First of all, he had to get himself prepared, and that was the whole Aveda in Beis Lavan. So therefore he said, he should have done it right away, because that was the whole purpose of the brachas that Yitzchok gave him. They were in order to be Mavara as Esau. The Yitzchok Rotza Levorich es Esau. He wanted to bench Esau directly. V'hainu she's barabos there. He thought that Esau, he brought down on him. And that's once again what we saw. That Yitzchok wanted to give Esau these tremendous lights, which were his brachas. This tremendously high light would come straight down from a tremendously high madrega, higher than Atzilus and higher than the Ilim and Akudim, and come all the way down onto Esau, and all the tzutzes would jump in. Yeah, so what is the truth? However, the truth is that Esau was so low at that point that had that big light fallen on him, he would have just got swallowed into him and got lost. Or he would have just been misbalbel, he would have just got confused and broken up even more than what he was. In other words, if you get something that's too high for you, then you just collapse even more than what you were before. So therefore, the Eibishter didn't allow that to happen. The Eibishter didn't allow those high orders to go into Esau directly, because it wouldn't have helped anything. He first of all gave them to Yankee, and those high powers that were in Yankee, they were supposed to go into Esau, because they had to go first of all through Yaakov in order to reach reach Esau. So that's alternatively by a mensch, for example, what down considers that all the highest inyonim to reach your nefesh habahami is, why don't you just bring down all these high things directly into your nefesh habahami? But we see it doesn't work that way. First of all, you have to bring the highlights into the nefesh elokis, and then the nefesh elokis has to give them over to the nefesh habahami. So they brought into the whole bureau really occurs through the nefesh elokis, and the whole perfection occurs through the nefesh elokis. So the same thing here. Somebody should put something in. He's gone and left the safer open there for all time. Maybe if you'd have gone for a second, much mistake. It's the whole union is the same by the man. First of all, the gil has to be to your nefesh elokis, and then afterwards it can go to the nefesh habahami. So we see the same thing here. It couldn't go directly. The highlights of Yitzchak when they come, they couldn't go directly into the Ra of Esau. First of all, it had to go through Yang. He said, therefore, Yang, we got this tremendous power from Yitzchak, but he should have used it straight away. So the Rebbe says, no, he should have, but he couldn't at that point, because take on Esau was a tremendous job. And first of all, he had to prepare himself and get everything ready in the highest elements that they should be able to spoil the Kedusha, which would be able ultimately to be Mavara as Esau. So therefore, it had to take time. He said, I've been late. I shouldn't have been so late, but what can I do? He said that that's the preparation in order to carry out the bureau. He said, "In bitei levarah," he said, "The Yitzchak rotze levarich es levarich." I'm sorry, as Esau. Hainu she's barer b'zeh. He should bring out all the netzutzis, and he should have an elevation through that. Avu b'emes. Tzorich liyoi zeh alidei yang kivdavki. Pictures in the mention has to go through the nefesh elokis. V'nimtzet ha'brachas the Yitzchak ha'ika kavona hu b'ktei levarer es Esau. Well, the whole reason why Yitzchak brought brachas into the world, why he wanted to bless the cloud, was in order to be mevarer as Esau. So we see that this whole thing of being mevarer Esau is a very big Ika inyan. In other words, Yidden are not in the world just to be perfect Yidden. They're in the world in order to ultimately to be mevarer as Esau. That's one of the big inyanim. We spoke about that Baridus last night at the end of the Shir. Very kind of him to repeat the whole thing and go over and over again. But we hope that maybe some of it went in and stayed, didn't go out to the other ear, like a lot of times that does occur, unfortunately. We have to hope that maybe some of it was remembered. But anyway, that's the Ika, that we're going to be Mavara Esau. So all these amazing brachas that Yitzchak gave, they will be emes in order to get at the bureau of Esau. Mavara is Esau, b'koyach seh. Or beirachei b'toil, like we saw in the mind we learned in Parshat Toil days. Vayitem l'chol Elokim. That we asked the whole Shaila, why did he give him Torah? What was in him from Torah? And we saw that was the Yigiyah in Torah, not Stam Torah, but the usage of Torah and a koyach to be Mavara. So the Rebbe said that's one of the Nekudas in Torah. The Torah bo gam b'tainoi shel sheker. We see that in Dini Nazikin, there's whole Mishnayos and whole Gemaras and whole Sugyas, where they talk about two guys that meet up in the Beis, and they're trying to bluff one the other. You know, each one's trying to work out. If you're kind of this way, how we meet the other guy. So they begin. One of them is tiny sheker, or maybe one of them for sure is saying something that's not completely emes. So the whole the point of the Bezin is to try and work out, you know, who's saying the truth and on what klalim can we judge the whole thing in order to know with whom is the truth. So in the meantime, the Gemara talks about what's going on in the head of the guy who's tiny sheker. So we see that the Torah goes all the way down, even into to explain to you tiness of sheker. What's that got to do with Torah? That was the Rebbe said, that's being Mavara the Ra. When the Gemara talks about those inyonim, it's really like sending down a big light of a tremendous bonfire into the oilam of those clippers in order to draw out the netzutzis and be Mavara, even the Ra. So now you can understand all the Dini Nazikin in the Torah, And you come soon in the Perek of Bab Basra. I don't know if you're aware, you're learning or what. In Perek Gimel, there's a lot of stories of it in the Gemara. But this guy said this, and this guy said that. This guy was sitting on the land. And this guy said, no, it's my land. And he said, no, I've been here 3 years. And And it was just one story after the other in Perek Cheshire Safatim. But Dafim, after Dafim, there's these different stories that the Gemara tells that they came before the Bezdins. So the Rav Sheish is paskin this way, and another Rosh Bezdin he paskins in another case another way. So that was the whole unit of all those halachas in the Torah. He said, "Los hois teiker kishekibu rabrachis hoyer tzadik levaretz." That's what it should have been. That was the whole purpose. That was the whole tachlis of Yitzchak giving these brachas. So he should have taken the brachas and immediately taken that koach and gone over to Esau and tried to be mavar him. Aval lo yehoya efsha ki hoya tzadik lischazik chilo b'chinas hatikun. He had to strengthen his own soul. Ksheit atzmo chilo. He had to make everything and he had to prepare it all in all the Elam Yisraelim. In other words, Yaakov prepared this tremendous barrage of emes in the Elam Yisraelim, put everything right. It was all the Eros in Malchus with all the Inanim, that he should be able to bring this tremendous barrage of light into the Elam Lamata. And Mamela, that would be Matachin Esau. And therefore he had to first of all strengthen himself. I've been delayed until now. He shouldn't really have been late. He shouldn't really have. And that's why he said it in the form of an apology in a way. It shouldn't have maybe been like that, but there was no choice. The reason being that I have to be by love and I have to live in the household of Lavan, Lavara b'chinas ha'toiv. Yeah? Well, this chazik bi'atzmik now, you have to go through this whole union with Lavan in order to prepare the whole union of Elam Atikan Lamaila, and then he'll be able to deal with Esau. Therefore he said, V'eicha adato, hey, not going to be mitzad perfect cheshboinus, it should have been immediately my approach to Esau. But it couldn't be that way. I had to go through certain inyonim, which made me able to prepare all the whole barrage, if I call it, which would bring about the bureau of peace. And immediately Kasha Nifto mi Beis Lavan. Immediately got out of Beis Lavan and he left Lavan behind. And we see immediately after that Vaishlach, Sholach El Esau. He sent these malachim to Esau for Huinin Biro Hora. He was now waiting to approach, not only waiting, but he was advancing to approach the Biro of the Ra. I'm now sending Lahagid Le'adini, that's referring to Esau. I'm sending to refer to you, my sir, to find favor in your eyes. So the Alter Rebbe in Torah wasn't to find favor in his eyes. What do you mean to find favor? Grace, literally. The Hine says, Matthias Chaim. When you say that I found favor by somebody, or I found grace by him, you do a shazo b'chinas maki. V'ayim b'chinas ha'makifim t'toihu. So he said that when you say Matthias Chaim, well, that's a thing that doesn't, it's put down. In many places, Matthias Chaim is a thing that doesn't make any sense. It's a how do you call it, a segula dikazach. It's a thing, some people find favor in your eyes. They just have a certain grace that appeals. We don't really know why. What's their trick? They just have a certain, what's called favor or grace in the eyes of other people, and that's called a makif. It's something that doesn't come in normal cheshbeinas. And therefore sometimes some people are moitzchain by certain groups or certain people, and others, by others maybe not so much. It's called a high delicate inyan which is not al piseichel. And therefore the Alter Rebbe says that it's a inyan for makif. It's like a gilui oil, and like it's brought down by Esther. It's brought down by Esther Hamalka. The big Magushim king, this great Grover Goy, what is it called, Achashverosh, he liked Esther from all the other. So the Gemara said that she was really ugly, Esther. She wasn't all that beautiful at all. She was sort of greenish looking and not particularly, tremendously, how do you call it, beautiful looking, but pashtas. But then it was a Chucho Chesed. Yeah, Marshu Chalea Milmaila was a very high form of divine grace that sort of dwelt upon her. And even this guy, he was aware of this. He saw this tremendous, like, shining light, and he was all taken by it. So he said, "Oh, she's better than all the others." So we see that that's called Matthias Chaim. He found favor, and nobody knows quite why. So the Gemara says, yeah, it was like a very high heavenly thing. It wasn't a normal thing. It wasn't a normal thing. Al-Pi normal pastors, you should have put her at the bottom of the list. So therefore, you can never tell in Yonah from Matthias Chaim. It's a very good Indian show Makifim. That's what the altar writes in Torah. So therefore he said, I've sent to you now, I want to be Moitzechain, or I want to bring your Makif over in such a way that we'll be able to bring the Makifim to you in the Kelim of Tikkun. Well, that's the famous principle of the Rebbe. Pirush Limtzechain, hu sheyumshechu amakifim tatoyu b'pinus hatikun b'pnimiyus. In other words, to bring the makifim tatoyu, the Oirish makifim, to bring them into the kelim of Olam HaTikun, and we saw Vayi Toisef Esoidrois. If the kelim of Tikkun are able to give the Oirish further, they're able to give them down and shine them into all the worlds. There'll be extra divine light in the world. And that was the Inan that he wanted in order to be Mavarer. There'll be a big Gileoyer, and so all the Netutis will come B'derma. He said, V'hainu, however, K'moishin is B'oliyu, Shalidei HaBirulim de Teshuva, Alidei Zeh, Yechu Mayim Chaim, in the Pasuk in Zechariah, Shahina Birulim, Chetziom, half of them El Yam HaKadmoni, V'Chetziom we saw to the Yam HaAcharein, Shalidei Zeh, Nimsha Teisef Es Oires, Batoiro, even in the Indian of Torah is Nimsha Teisef Es Oires. So here we see that Yankee Avinu realized that to be Moitzeh Chaim, to bring this whole inner, the high lights of Esav, the oils which withdrew even the Shas Shvira, to bring them down into the Kelim of Tikkun, and for that he needed an even higher avoider than what he'd been doing up till now, and that was the Indian of Tshuva. He had to be more in this restless yearning to just keep going higher and higher the whole time. Well, that's the Indian about Teshuvah. So here we see that everything happened by the others. There's not one prat. Somehow or another it didn't occur by our forefathers. So they prepared the whole way. And by the time there was Indian for Matan Torah, the whole Indian for Matan Torah was only a tremendous giving a koyach that we should be able to do things that the others achieved with their own power. And that's what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, Perek Yud Ches. That we have the Amshocha of all the Inyonim in Kedushas, Nefesh Elokis, that all come from Avraham Avinu and Havis. He said, Avlaheim Paul Uzeis Alidei Avidosum Heim Velanu Yerushalanu Hu Mi Avisei. We have it as a Yerusha from there. But they caused it in a tremendous Amshocha of their own efforts. That's an unbelievable thing. We get the ability to do all that through Matan Torah. We got all the unbelievable Nesinas Koyach of the Atzmus and so on in Matan Torah, but they achieved it all Bi'atzma. Therefore this whole Birur Alidei Tshuva and the Mayim Chayim and the whole Inim which brings the taste of Asiris even into Torah the way it is, said that was all done by Yaakov Avinu. He said, V'zeo Matthias Chain She'iyah Teisef Asera B'Torah, in the cloud, in the Vedas cloud, and the effect on the world. Matthias Chain is that your Torah is, like we said, Torah and Maishim Toivim, that it becomes a illuminated Torah and it lights up the world around. But that's the unit for Matthias Chain. V'zeu Shemiyad Sheniftam Milovan, immediately he got potter from Lavan. Sholach El Esav Levarare. He wanted to take on Esav, he wanted to elevate Esav, and tells him that you should know, Shim Lavan Gavti, I stayed over there by Lavan, I prepared everything. Birer Alidei Amitzvah, Beprines Abirulim Detoi. We made all the Inyanim and the Olamas, everything ready. Venish Chazik Kva Biachme. He's all ready now, he's all full of all the Giluyim Harayah but perfection, like we said, he brought down into Malchus, the middle Halavona. Oh, it's over there in Ein Beis, a famous mimer on Yutzis Kislev, where he compares what the Alter Rebbe did to what the Yankovin did. The Alter Rebbe filled up whole Malchus with all these unbelievable gilim of Penimus HaTorah, and that's like the preparation of the world for being Mavara Esav and bring the Guru Shlaim and take it from me on the yard. So we see that the Alter Rebbe and our Rebbeim took on themselves to complete the work, as you might say. Yankov Avinu, for some reason he did it, we got it all ready, but Esav wasn't ready. Well, that's the big kiddush we mentioned last night, that the Rebbeim sensed already that Esav was ready. Therefore we see the amazing thing, when the Alter Rebbe was in prison, these big knobs from the Goyim, from Esav, came in to see him, and they were all misbattled him. They all went out, this fool was unbelievable. His pilot, even the Tsar got dressed up as a commoner to walk in and see who was this man. He heard so much what's going on with this elder rabbi there in the prison. They must see him. You know the whole story. The Tsar got dressed up. He came in to see the elder rabbi from the Mausa. It's written in all the books. There's so many books. I don't blame you guys. There's so many books that it's impossible to keep up with. You just keep printing all books and books and books. Impossible to keep up with them. But it's written anyway. There's a miser that the Tsar, he heard from the minister of the religions and from other people that they're all talking about this. The minister of religions, he got completely blown out with his pilots from the Alter Rebbe. So they all got spoken. Eventually, the message reached the Tsar that this tremendous, sage of the Jewish people is sitting there in the prison, and what are we going to do with him? Who's the Tsar? And they say all these ridiculous things against him. So the Tsar said he'd like to meet him. So the Tsar got dressed up in commoner clothes, and he walked into the Alter Rebbe's cell. So as soon as the Alter Rebbe saw him, the Alter Rebbe made a bracha, Baruch Atah Hashem, that you make when you see a king of the Yumas HaOlam. When you see a king from Goyim, and you say Baruch Atah Hashem, you say Tashat Cholok Mechokmos El Bosav Adom. I think that's when you see a Chochom. What is it? Cholok Malchus El Bosav. I've forgotten exactly. There's a bracha you make when you see a Goyish king, and there's a bracha you make when you see a Jewish king. When you see the Malchus Yisrael, another. So the Alter Rebbe immediately made this bracha. So the Tsar didn't realize he didn't understand Lashon Kodesh, but he understood that something was very special. So he said, "Wish it to us." What was that? So the Alter Rebbe said, "Your Majesty," and he called him, "Your Majesty." He said, "When you came in, I had to make a blessing. That's according to the Torah. You have to make a blessing when you see a king." So he just collapsed. How'd you know I was a king? I'm not dressed like a king. You've never seen me before. You've seen pictures of me. You might have seen me from a distance back. How do you know? I'm the king. These are to give. So it's very simple. They said, "What's the trick? How did you know?" He said, "Because it's written in the Gemara that Malchusa Di'ara Ke'ein Malchusa D'Rakiya." The kingship Lamata partakes from the kingship of Lamayla. It's a Gemara Masechta Brachas. Oh, story of Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef was Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Yosef was a Saginor, he was blind. And once the king, the Roman king or the emperor, someone was going past, and all sorts of big knobs went past, all the ministers and everything, and people kept saying to him, no, they wanted to trick him. They said, "No, you should make a bracha." And he said, "No, not now." when the emperor went past, and he made a bracha. So they said, "Don't you know?" So he said, "Because the pictures of the Alter Rebbe." He said, "The Malchusa Di'ara is Ke'ein Malchusa D'Rakiya." He said, "When he went past, I felt a new Gil Elikus Nomali. I felt a whole union from Yira Shamayim and Gil Elikus in my nefesh, because that's Me'ein Malchusa D'Rakiya." So I realized that was the king was going past at that moment. I made the bracha. Very similar thing. The Alter Rebbe said, when you came in through the door, all of a sudden I felt a new Giluf and Yira Shamayim and Heragish Eloki. So I realized that you must be the king. Thank you. Malchusa Di'ara Ke'ein Malchusa D'Rakiya. So that's how that is. He was completely naturally. So he said, "Well, I have to admit to you that I do happen to be the Tsar." So then they had a bit of a conversation, and he just left. He was dumbfounded.
So they say that helped greatly, that later the Tsar began to realize that there's something about this guy, that there's something funny with this whole business. And the Tsar was very in favor, but of course, with all the courts and everything, he couldn't just sort of write him off, had to go through the courts. But that was very much in the Alter Rebbe's benefit, that the whole thing. So anyway, whatever that has to do with it, I don't quite remember, but anyway, so he says, Bira al-idea mitzvah b'chinas ha-birurim de-toiv, v'nish chazek kvar bi'atzmai v'ata bi'chol terevar. Oh, so we see that the whole Indian, the Alter Rebbe, one of the main things was the Alter Rebbe was there was to be mavara, the Sarim of Asa, and even the king. And then the Alter Rebbe, when he left, they found on the Alter Rebbe's table a piece of paper. And when they came to take him later, they went in the Alter Rebbe's room. They found it was written a pasuk in Tehillim, which says, "Sorim rodafuni chinom midvorcha pochad libi." It's a pasuk that the ministers and the kings have run after me for nothing, but my heart fears your word. It's a pasuk from David HaMelech. So he said, with that the Alter Rebbe was being maram, is that Sorim, the whole infant Sorim, right, are running after me, but he said, I fear only you, therefore I'm gonna come through it all. And so later, when he came out, the Alter Rebbe, he wrote this famous letter to Rabbi Yitzhak Berditchever, to Baruch Mezbez. At that time, he was still on good terms with Baruch Mezbez. So later, it sort of got a bit simple. But Rabbi Yitzhak Berditchever, he was still on. They were very close friends. He gave him their money. The Alter Rebbe said he liked the Berditchever Ahavas Nefesh. He said he loved him very much, the Berditchever. Yeah. So anyway, he wrote this famous letter, and in the letter, the Alter Rebbe writes there that he got out, and he says that the Eibishter made tremendous nisim to help us, and he said, "V'gam hamelech v'sorov omru she'etzba Elokim hu zeh," that the king and all his ministers have said that this is the finger of the Eibishter. Pictures the people, Sorim of Pari said to Pari. So the Rebbe in a famous Sikhan, you discuss it, what's it? The Melech V'sorov, that they all said it's who is it to us? And one of the principal things in the whole Gila, you discuss it, the whole Gila from Penimus HaTorah, was the Bira of the Sarim of Esau, that they should all admit that it was a Gila, of course, and that's a big Bira in the Sarim of Esau. Oh, big Bira. So we see that it's all like a hemshah. It's all a tremendous continuation. And his kazik kvar bi'atzmei v'ata bi'chol telavara Esau shehu hara but alidei teshuvah. Therefore the Alter Rebbe, the whole thing the Alter Rebbe said was tshuva. He said his people are not sitting in the bali tshuva. The whole inyan from the Alter Rebbe, the whole amazing chiddush of the Alter Rebbe is inyan from tshuva. So you see it all fits in beautifully. V'eshlachol ha'hogid, to tell you limtzei chayin, to bring down this makif sheyum shechalei dizeh b'chinas teis v'soyres ba'toiro. There should be this unbelievable new giluim in the inyan from Toiro, and that of course the whole gilu in the world, and hamshochis harikot oiris to toihu, the makifim to toihu b'kelim de tikkun, and that would be the inyan from the scholars. Ultimately speaking of Melech HaMashiach. So therefore we see it's all a hemshach, the whole kilo and therefore nine base, there's a Maimon follows by Islam where the Rebbe Hashem says certain similar things over there nine base, then he follows with immediately a Maimon, because by Islam and Yitzchak are always very close, so one to the other. There's a whole big Maimon over there, but Yitzchak, he talks about the middle of Halavona and the whole thing, and it's clear that what he's saying is that the Alter Rebbe was like a hemshach of this whole Aveda calculus. It's like bringing it all to its what you might call its culmination, and bringing it into the world of Manas. It should be the final bira. And the Rebbe is the shlemus of that hamshocha. And all we're going to do is just do things the Rebbe's way and take it from here, and hopefully. As soon as there's a gentleman there, you see him at the end of the davening. Yeah. He learned here in our program 30 years ago, B'diuk. He learned 30 years ago. So he came up to us and had a whole tour with me. And he reminisced a little bit, even though he's changed quite a lot since then. And then he said to me, he said, I know she guys said Yechi, and I know she wore a badge, He said, isn't that sort of overdone? You don't think you're sort of going out of your kalim a bit, He said, I belong in certain circles in America where, that sort of thing is looked at. It seems to be, sort of queer, I move in, high circles. So who are these high circles? The journalists and people. I said, first of all, these are not necessarily the real high circles. There's no one. And secondly, as I explained to him, that if you examine carefully the whole Gilui of Chassidus and the whole Gilui of the Alter Rebbe, that the Rebbe is the shleimus of that whole Inyan, and the Rebbe's Inyan is to make it occur, B'Pel Mamish, that it should be the Geulah, and the world's not going to reach any real perfection unless we start listening to the Rebbe, and that's what we hold. We hold, it's very simple. And I said, and a further prat that we hold is that Gimel Tammuz wasn't the end, Gimel Tammuz is just the beginning. From Gimel Tammuz and further, these unbelievable indications that the Rebbe's Koyach is just spread all over, and it's just going and going and increasing, and it's gradually, wherever people just let it in for a second, it conquers their world. So it's very simple. That's why we say Yechiyah Dineinu. So he put out his hand, he shook his hand. But anyway, he's a former Talmud. Very nice. I haven't heard from him since the Talmud left this year.
No. So if I see Bush, should I say that bracha?
Huh?
If I see President Bush, do I say that bracha?
No, I don't think so.
No.
Well, I mean, maybe. It could be. You have to ask the Rabbanim. It could be because the American president is very close to a king. The American president is one of the most powerful men in the world. The truth is. He's got powers beyond the Senate and beyond the Parliament and the whole thing, much more than any other leader in the world. And much more than the Queen in England. The Queen in England, she's a queen, but she's more like a sentimental power of the country. She's not so much a political or economical power. But he has got both. He's got both political, economical. He's got tremendously far-reaching powers, the American president. So it could be. It could be. It'd be interesting to ask. Even though I don't hold from him, but that doesn't matter. If you have to make the point, you have to make the point. And the truth of the matter is, he's not to blame. He's not to blame. It's these guys over here that are to blame. He's not to blame. They've been nudging the American presidents for years, ever since the 6 Day War. I explained it last night. They've been working on the American presidents.
So you're going to make a bracha
years
on a
and years.
You're going to make a bracha on a golem?
Well, it doesn't have to do one or the other. He's got the world power, so it's on that you make the bracha. But it could be, I don't know, because he is of all the leaders in the world, he's the one that's closest to what a king used to be. Because the Queen of England, she doesn't have that type of power. But she has the most amazing emotional hold on the people in England. It's actually mind-boggling. If she comes out, the whole country, if she goes on a tour or something, they'd still go mad to see her. She's got this tremendous, like it's an old sentiment type hold on the country. And it's very interesting. So in that way, she's also got a power of a king, or the embassy. Political and economical power of a king, but an American president. He can literally do anything. He can even veto the Senate if he wants. Just it's not worth it always for him to use that power. But he can do it. I said, listen guys, I want to go and talk with those guys for a minute. Would you all like to come?